Welcome to Procurious's Bravo podcast series, celebrating women in procurement. I'm Hugo Britt, Content Director for Procurious, and I'm delighted to be a part of this series sponsored by Telstra, featuring inspirational stories and career tips from 5 women with some very valuable advice to share. I'm joined by Procurious Founder Tania Seary, one of the strongest advocates in the profession for women in procurement and supply management. Tania's here today to give her advice on building courage in your career. Tania, can you tell us a little bit about why you chose procurement as a career?
Thank you, Hugo. It's great to join you today. Look, in the period prior to joining procurement, I had some fantastic jobs in marketing. I really had a great time for about 10 years. I worked in the Walt Disney Company for a while in London in their international television department. I did a lot of communications for the listing of public companies, which was very fun. But look, nothing struck me like the first day that I worked in procurement. Moving from one side of the table to the other, that was a real rush. And I guess what I've always loved about procurement is the impact that you can have and the scope and scale of the function. You know, it touches so many parts of the business and outside of the business. So I was sold from the minute I was sitting on the other side of the table. And what prompted that? I finished my MBA in the States at Penn State, and they had a great operations and logistics school. My company sponsored me to do that study, and it really had me fascinated. And I was asking my fellow students what they were going to do when they finished university, and they said, "Oh, we're going into procurement." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because you can become a corporate superstar overnight. You can save millions of dollars. The CEO and CFO know who you are, and you get promoted quickly." So that sounded like a great idea to an ambitious 30-something. So that's what prompted it. And as I said, once I got on the other side of the table, I was really hooked.
That's a great story, and I love that phrase, corporate superstar. So why do you believe courage is the number one attribute for procurement and supply professionals?
Well, I think any successful business person has to have a lot of courage, because if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to be someone who can drive change. And usually driving change is about challenging the current state, obviously. So you're going to have to step out from where you are and actually have the self-belief to stand for a new project or a concept that you believe is going to work. And I think this is the perfect time in the history of procurement to have courage and to step out, because we sort of have this moonshot opportunity. All the opportunities, the Procurement 4.0 as we're offering it, AI, RPA, you name it, the Internet of Things, is really our moonshot opportunity to change the trajectory of our profession. For so many years we've been sort of stuck in this transactional malaise, and these new tools are an opportunity for us to really change our trajectory. So I'm sort of wanting to encourage everyone to make sure they're not on the launch pad looking at the Apollo space shuttle takeoff, but they're actually in the driver's seat. And I think that is going to take courage. And, I think there's a lot of things I'm talking about around the world now about how people have to really look at where they are in their organization and how they make sure they're aligned with what the corporate objectives are, and align their own style and their own stories to align, with that corporate phase and direction.
And that's a very good point about it taking courage when you do come across some sort of rejection or your big idea not taking off in your company. It takes a bit of resilience, and I know salespeople would be fine with that, but for procurement it can be a bit off-putting. Let's talk about
just on that, Hugo. I'll just say is that really that's why I recommend to people to choose your projects carefully. Getting big ideas up in big companies takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of time. So you really have to be careful and considerate of which projects you put yourself behind, and you've got to have a lot of self-belief, because you're going to be challenged and knocked by the organisation. And there's a couple of quick tips I'd like to share if we've got time. And the first one is that, really make sure you do your homework and you have a strong business case and really build support across the organisation as you're building your business case, because you can then fall back on those people as your support network when you get challenged at the senior level. So a lot of people probably already know that, but I just wanted to remind them. The second thing is choose your sponsors wisely. It's really important to have a corporate sponsor for some of these courageous projects, but just make sure if it is a cognitive or something that's a bit sexy, that your sponsor isn't picking you just so they're involved in the flavour of the day. Really try and find someone who understands the business benefits of what you're putting forward and will support you. And then I say use them wisely. Just bring them in for the photo opportunities and when you need support. So look, I just want to share a couple of quick tips there on those big idea projects, because you are going to have to be resilient, but they have huge paybacks. If these projects are successful, you will be recognised. And look, you'll even be recognised if they're not successful, if you've given it a really red-hot go.
That's some valuable advice. And continuing with the actionable tips, I think that our listeners will appreciate. So what are some personal objectives that you recommend that our listeners should build the courage to achieve in 2019?
Well, look, something I've been talking about all year and will continue to be is the importance of being human. I think the old school method was that, you sort of leave your personality at the door when you go into work, but I think more and more it's important for employees to see that you're a little bit vulnerable, a little bit human, and that they can relate to you. We get a lot of questions at Procurious, should I have a personal profile and a corporate profile? And I understand why some people do want different profiles, but I think particularly with your business profiles on Procurious and LinkedIn, you should be the one person and you should show a bit of your personal side, because people really get to know you as the person, which is so important. But I think also being human is really going to be our competitive advantage in this Industry 4.0 future. My belief is that our role in Industry 4.0 will really be to orchestrate, collaborate within this complex technology-enabled sort of web of suppliers. And that when Watson and our other bots and AI are pointing at us in different directions, is that we will have to be the ones who step in and reconcile and connect people to make decisions. So, we're going to have to play to our strengths: collaboration, connection, innovation, influence, the things that only we humans can do. And that will be the future of procurement, really, is these trusted advisors that can solve these complex problems. So I think definitely to be human is one of my key drivers, and it's so refreshing in a business world that's full of a lot of droids to meet people who are human, and it's something that not everyone has the courage to do. A lot of people put their business face on, but I think that people will really reap the benefits through relationships if they do put a bit of themselves out there.
I love that image of the old school procurement professional walking into the office and hanging up their coat and their hat and their personality at the door before they walk in. So things have changed. So that was a personal objective. What about some business objectives that will require courage, but ultimately pay off over the next few months? Well, look,
there's a couple of things that I've really got my mind set to talking to CPOs and people around the world in 2019 about. And one of those is achieving gender pay equity. And the other one is about ensuring procurement and supply chain maintains its sort of ethical true north status. But the gender pay equity one is a really big one for me, not just because I'm part of the population that sort of suffers from this, but I think it's just something that we need to address in this day and age. And when you look at the statistics, I know, Hugo, you published that story about the differences between the UK, the US, Australia. The pay gap is absolutely astonishing. And when you think about, when you read on social media, they say, tell women, oh, you can stop working now, it's September. You're basically working for the rest of the year free because you've got a 25% pay gap from your male counterparts. It really hits home. And, of course, it also plays out in retirement because all of our retirement funds, our superannuation plans are based on our salaries. So women also suffer, really their whole life due to this inequity. So I'm really going to be encouraging leaders around the world to take this on, head on and ensure that their teams are paid equally. I think that female leaders, this will be an easy. I think for most of the leaders, I know that this is a no-brainer, but I think it's something that the whole business world struggles with, and the procurement can take a firm stand and be one of the first to put its hand up and say, look, we have achieved this important goal. So I see that as, being hopefully procurement's number one cheerleader around the world. I think that's something that we could really hang our hat on, which doesn't take too much work. The second one is I've always felt that procurement and supply chain is sort of the ethical true north of an organisation. And just as I was talking about then with us having to reconcile differences, I think that people throughout the business look to our function to actually say what's right and what's the right way to treat suppliers and commercial situations. And I think we really need to enhance that. And I'm not just talking about ethical supply chains, which of course are a huge challenge. I'm just talking about the way we do deals and the way we, carry ourselves in our everyday negotiations. I think it's really important, and I think it's something that we could maybe certify or embed throughout organisations and really formalise a little bit more, and we would really reap the benefits. So, if we were to say the end of 2019, 2010, 20, that we're a very ethical, profession that pays employees fairly, I think that would be a great result. Of course, all AI-enabled and cognitive as well, but that might be asking for too much. But those would be my aspirations for the profession.
Tania, it looks like that's all we have time for, so thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you for listening to the Bravo podcast series sponsored by Telstra. This series will be made available in the Procurious Learning section.